I'm Elena Brooks, and the night my family finally erased me, I was holding a chipped mug of cold tea and trying not to scream. The living room glowed with artificial light from my sister's ring light, casting sharp shadows across the walls as she celebrated her latest follower milestone. Behind her, our parents clapped like proud campaign donors, their smiles thin, rehearsed. I stood just beyond the frame, halfway between the kitchen and the chaos, invisible until the Wi-Fi glitched. And suddenly, it was my fault. "You ruin everything," Madeline snapped, eyes blazing. My mother nodded. My father sighed. And just like that, I knew this wasn't just another dig. This was a declaration, and I wasn't going to survive it quietly. Hope you enjoyed this story. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. I hadn't planned to leave that night. I really hadn't. I'd come back to Eugene because I needed a pause, a place to breathe after my lease in Portland ended and my last tutoring contract fell through. I thought maybe for a few weeks, home could be neutral ground, a landing spot, not a battlefield. Turns out I was just background noise waiting to be blamed. The house was dim except for the cold, artificial light spilling from Madeline's influencer setup. Tripod, camera, LED ring. Her face still lingered on the paused screen behind her. Flawless skin, perfect teeth, that insufferable laugh. 50,000 followers, she'd squealed earlier. "We're going national." Like it was a family achievement, but it wasn't. It was hers. Always hers. I hadn't said anything when she toasted herself. I just stood in the kitchen, swirling cold tea, watching as they celebrated like she'd just won the Pulitzer. I wasn't mentioned once. Then the Wi-Fi flickered, just for a second. Her live stream froze mid-smile. That's when it happened. That's when I was erased. She turned on me like I had personally unplugged the router. Her voice snapped up an octave. "You kill the vibe just by existing, Elena," she said. I blinked. "What?" "You're a jinx. You ruin everything." And then Mom backed her, calmly, casually. "She's not wrong," she said, brushing imaginary lint off her lap. And Dad? He said nothing, just that same tired exhale through his nose. I set the mug down carefully. I didn't want it to shatter. Ceramics, unlike people, are easier to clean up. I walked to the guest room, the one they'd let me use like a favor, like I was some exchange student they couldn't wait to send home. I packed silently. My old backpack still smelled like dust and dry soap. I didn't take photos, didn't leave a note. I zipped it shut and stepped into the cold Oregon night. The air smelled like pine needles and burnt toast. My breath fogged up in front of me as I walked. No one followed. No one called out my name. The bus stop sat under a flickering street lamp 2 blocks from the gas station. I sat there with my coat wrapped tight and my hands shoved deep into my sleeves. When the bus pulled up 20 minutes late, I climbed in without looking back. That was the last time I saw that house. That version of me. That silence I had mistaken for safety. The bus took me downtown. Not that I had a plan. I just knew I needed distance. The city was half asleep, the sidewalks glistening from fresh drizzle, buildings towering like strangers who didn't care what you'd lost. I found a motel 3 blocks from the transit station, the kind with buzzing neon signs and no real reception desk, just a window and a buzzer. I paid cash. The guy didn't ask questions. He barely looked up from his reality show playing behind him. The room was small, damp, and smelled faintly of cigarette ash and lemon cleaner. But it had a lock, and for the first time in years, that was enough. I dropped my bag near the bed and sat on the edge. It groaned beneath me, like even the furniture was exhausted. I stared up at the ceiling. There was a water stain shaped like a broken heart, or maybe a star that had burned out too soon. I didn't cry. I didn't sleep. I just sat there wondering how long it would take for them to notice I was gone. Turns out it took them 14 missed calls. But not that night. That night there was only silence, and the sound of my own name, echoing nowhere. The morning light hit like a slow bruise, grey, dull, and heavy with meaning. I sat up on the creaky motel bed, still in the jeans I'd worn last night. The ceiling stain was still there, a heart or a star depending on how I squinted. Either way, it looked tired. So was I. My phone buzzed once, then again. I flipped it face down on the nightstand. pretending it was just a weather alert or a spam text. But I knew what it was, the fallout, the sudden urgency after years of indifference. I peeled myself out of bed like I was shedding a second skin. My neck ached. My shoulders cracked when I reached for my backpack. I hadn't packed much, just essentials, and a few charges tangled in a knot of regret. I shuffled to the tiny bathroom. The mirror above the sink was cracked, splitting my reflection into two uneven halves. One side looked numb, the other side looked like it had finally snapped. I splashed cold water on my face. It stung. Not because it was too cold, but because I'd forgotten how real sensation felt. Afterward, I wandered outside with my coat zipped to my chin. The motel parking lot smelled like antifreeze and cigarettes. The vending machine buzzed as I passed it. A man in a hoodie stood near the dumpster, muttering to himself. He didn't look up. I didn't stop. 2 blocks away was a gas station I remembered from childhood visits downtown. I bought a granola bar and a bottle of water, mostly out of habit, not hunger. The clerk didn't ask how I was. I appreciated that. I kept walking. The streets of Eugene in the early morning are haunting in their quiet. I passed shuttered cafes, damp newspaper stands, and a crooked flyer stapled to a utility pole. Missing cat. Reward if found. I paused and stared at the photo. A tabby named Biscuit. He looked like he had somewhere else to be. I felt that. Half a mile later, I reached a small coffee shop with a chalkboard sign out front. Free Wi-Fi. Coffee refills all day. Stay as long as you need. That felt like a kind of mercy. Inside, it smelled like burnt toast and bleach. A barista with lavender hair and a sleepy smile took my order. I got the smallest coffee on the menu, $1.75, and took a seat near the outlet. I opened my backpack and pulled out my phone. 17 missed calls now. I didn't check the messages. I wasn't ready to hear voices that only called when they needed something fixed. Instead, I opened my browser and pulled up an old tutoring platform I hadn't used in 2 years. Somehow my account still existed. My profile picture was outdated. Hair too long, smile too hopeful. But it was still me. Or at least the version of me I'd tried to build. I updated the bio, SAT and ACT prep, study planning, essay support patient, reliable. I believe in showing up, even when no one else does. I stared at that sentence longer than I expected to. It sounded small, but it felt true. I clicked save. Then I started applying to listings. One parent after another, students overwhelmed by testing, parents desperate for help. I understood all of it, not because I was brilliant, but because I knew what it meant to feel like you were falling behind while everyone else pretended they were soaring. Halfway through my 5th application, I froze. My cursor blinked in the About Me section, right above the words, Reliable, Compassionate Listener. I could hear my grandmother's voice as clearly as if she was sitting beside me. You were always the one who listened, she'd said once, after a chaotic Sunday dinner when everyone talked over each other. Not flashy, not loud, but steady, like a lighthouse. That memory clung to my ribs. She was the only one who saw me without needing a crisis to do it. At her funeral, a distant relative, someone I barely knew, had leaned in close and whispered, "Your grandmother's second letter was beautiful. I hope it brought you peace." Second letter? I'd only received one. When I asked my mother about it, 3 days after the service, still hoping she'd surprise me with honesty, she just waved me off. Oh, it was nothing, just old lady thoughts. That letter never reached me. Like so many other things in that house, it had been buried before it had the chance to bloom. I pushed the memory aside. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. I kept applying. By noon, I'd sent out 16 applications, no replies yet. But every time I hit send, it felt like reclaiming something. By 2 p.m., I had one reply, then another. 2 students, both overwhelmed. One senior prepping for the SAT, one adult learner trying to pass the GED. Their desperation felt familiar. And oddly, it comforted me. We were all trying to prove something. The Eugene Public Library was 2 blocks away. I walked there and discovered they let guests borrow Chromebooks for tutoring sessions. I signed up for a 2-hour slot the next day. It felt like movement. It felt like hope. I went back to the motel that evening, receipt still in hand from when I'd checked in. I flipped it over and started writing. Tutoring hours, 4 income via PayPal, $78, remaining cash, $190. Projected spend, 2 more nights. The numbers were small, but they were mine. I looked around the room again. It still smelled like bleach and damp fabric, but it didn't feel like a punishment anymore. It felt earned, chosen, like a blank page. I sat on the bed and stared at the wall where I'd taped my grandmother's first letter. The edges had curled from time, but her words still burned bright. You will build what no one sees today. For the first time in a long time, I believed her, because I wasn't waiting for them to call me back anymore. I was moving forward, quietly, steadily, towards something they couldn't take. The library smelled like old paper and rain, the kind of scent that clings to your sweater and makes you feel like something still matters. I signed in at the front desk with the kind of confidence you fake until it becomes real. First time reserving a Chromebook? The librarian asked, adjusting her glasses. I nodded. She slid a thin laptop toward me. 2-hour limit. You can renew if it's not busy. Her tone was kind but distant, like she'd seen a lot of drifting people before me. I carried the laptop to a corner table near the nonfiction section and opened it like it might bite. It didn't. It blinked awake, soft blue glow lighting up my face. I logged into the tutoring platform, hands a little shaky. My first session was in 10 minutes. The student's name was Riley, a high school junior from Salem, Oregon. Her profile photo showed a tired-looking girl with dark circles and a sarcastic smile. She logged on exactly on time. You're not 60 years old, she said, surprised. You sounded like my mom in your message. I laughed before I could help it. Sorry to disappoint. Nah, it's fine. At least you're not a YouTuber who thinks they're a teacher. She rolled her eyes. I liked her immediately. Her questions were scattered at first. Grammar rules, essay structure, how to stop using the word like every 5 seconds. But underneath it, she was sharp. Nervous, but sharp. I walked her through 3 sample prompts, asked her to rewrite 1 paragraph, and by the end of the session, she blinked at the screen and said, "You actually made that make sense. That's wild." Something cracked open in my chest. Nothing dramatic, just a soft click, like a window unjamming after years of being painted shut. When she logged off, I sat there staring at the empty chat box. I hadn't been useful in so long that I forgot what it felt like. The second session was with a woman named Marisol, 38, trying to get her GED after years of working night shifts and raising 2 kids. Her internet kept cutting out, and her camera was blurry, but she stayed with me the whole hour. I never finished school, she said, voice quiet, but I want to show my daughters that I can still do hard things. I didn't know what to say for a second. Then I just nodded and said, "You already are." That night, I walked back to the motel with aching feet, but a strange lightness in my chest. I wasn't thriving, not yet, but I wasn't disappearing either. In my room, I lit a cheap tea light I'd found in my bag and let the soft flame flicker against the wall. I opened my notebook and added to the back of the receipt. Clients, 2. Hours, 4. Total earned today, $112. Not much, but it felt like everything. I sat cross-legged on the motel bed and opened my tutoring folder, checking responses, sending follow-ups. My phone buzzed again. 4 missed calls, 2 from my mother, 1 from my dad, 1 from an unknown number I already knew belonged to Madeline. I didn't open them. I couldn't. Instead, I opened Instagram. I hadn't looked at her profile in days. Her most recent post was a photo of her in a beige cashmere sweater, standing next to our mother in what looked like the living room back home. The caption read, "Family is who shows up when it matters." The comment section was full of heart emojis and "You two are goals." I barely noticed the fake smiles. My eyes were locked on the background. The wall behind them used to hold the family portrait we took when I was 16. Madeline in the center, me awkwardly smiling at the edge, Dad stiff, Mom beaming. That photo was gone, replaced. In its place was a glossy new image, Madeline, front and center. Mom beside her in the same cardigan she wore to church every Easter. Dad even managed a half smile. And in front of them, their golden retriever, Finn. The dog they got a month after I moved out. I wasn't in the photo, not cropped out, not blurred, just absent, like I'd never been there. I zoomed in. The hallway lamp cast the same soft shadow across the beige wall, but the frame was new, the smiles rehearsed. It looked like a promotional ad for a bank, safe, clean, aspirational. I wanted to feel rage, or grief, but what I felt was colder, numb, like ice left too long in a glass. Not sadness, not even surprise, just confirmation. I closed the app and set my phone face down. I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "So that's what I was, an old frame." I thought of Riley, blinking at the end of our session, of Marisol, her voice full of determination, of Grandma, who once wrote, "You were always the quiet one, but you saw everything." I didn't cry. Instead, I reached into my backpack and pulled out a highlighter, circling the corner of my grandmother's letter on the motel wall. Then I opened a new document on the library-loaned Chromebook and typed a single sentence at the top. They erased me. I'm writing myself back in. And for the first time in years, I felt like the page was listening. 3 tutoring sessions in, and I finally had enough cash to afford 2 nights without worrying about skipping dinner. That kind of stability, however small, felt like a luxury. My room still smelled like bleach and something sour in the corners, but I stopped noticing. Every morning I walked to the same coffee shop, sat in the same corner near the outlet, and logged in. I was building something quiet, but real. My students were starting to trust me. Riley messaged me between sessions now, usually with sarcastic memes or questions about comma splices. Marisol sent me a voice message after passing her practice test. "My daughter said I look proud lately. I think it's because I am," she said. I played it twice. It made my throat tight in the best way. So when the email arrived that afternoon, it felt like someone had slid a knife under my ribs, quietly, efficiently. The subject line was short: podcast pitch, family resilience story. I almost deleted it without reading. My name was in the CC line, but the body of the message was addressed to a PR rep. I scrolled anyway. It was from Madeline. In it, she described her brand, her growth, her personal journey overcoming family toxicity. She called it a story of rebuilding image and rising above. Toward the bottom of the email, a single sentence made my stomach flip. "My sister? She's emotionally unstable. We don't speak. I'd prefer she's not involved in any way." Emotionally unstable. I read that line 3 times. My hand gripped the mouse until my knuckles went white. I wasn't surprised by the lie. I was stunned by how easily she could type it, as if it were a weather report, as if I were just a small, inconvenient storm she could name and then erase. I closed the tab, heart pounding. Then I opened Instagram again. I needed to see it one more time, not because I didn't believe it, but because I did. Her latest reel had over 10,000 likes. A soft piano track played while she walked barefoot through our parents' backyard, a mug in hand, golden hour hitting just right. Her caption read, "Healing isn't linear, but it's mine. Grateful for those who stayed." There were 3 photos embedded in the carousel, one of her and Mom, one of her workspace, filled with pastel planners and faux motivational quotes, and the last, the new family portrait again, clean, smiling, cropped. I wasn't there, not even in the reflection of the hallway mirror. I zoomed in like a fool. Nothing. I remembered taking the old version of that photo. I'd worn a navy sweater because Madeline said the white one clashed with her hair. I'd stood off to the side because Mom said symmetry mattered. And yet even then, I thought I belonged in the frame. Now there was no evidence I'd ever stood in that hallway, that house, that family. I pushed my laptop away and sat in silence for a long time. It wasn't anger, not yet, just weight, like someone had thrown a wool blanket over my chest and told me to breathe normally. I could still hear her voice, shrill, filtered, branding itself as empowerment. You kill the vibe just by existing. Maybe that would have been the end of it. Me sitting there, jaw clenched, spiraling slowly. But then I checked my spam folder. There it was. Subject line, Success Academy Launch Materials. It was a forwarded campaign deck from a PR intern. Attached were screenshots, diagrams, and draft copy for Madeline's new educational platform, something she was calling the Clarity Curriculum. The title hit me like a slap. I'd written it. I knew I had. Not the branding, she'd polish that, but the skeleton beneath it, the diagnostic questions, the session framework, the study schedule format with the color-coded grid. I remembered building that format on my old laptop with my grandmother's notes beside me. I remembered naming the sections based on what she used to say. Clarity creates confidence. My work, my name nowhere on it. My hands went cold. I scrolled faster. Page after page of my ideas dressed in her pastel aesthetic. Even the testimonials looked familiar. Slightly rewritten quotes from real students I'd worked with years ago. She'd scraped everything, whitewashed it, repackaged it under her name. I didn't even know how she'd gotten access. Maybe from my old folders on the family desktop. Maybe she'd kept a copy when we'd shared ideas years ago, back when I thought she wanted to collaborate, before she became someone who wore healing like a brand and used other people's silence as a tool. I printed it, all of it. I walked to the library's pay-to-print kiosk and fed every page into the machine like it was part of a ritual. Then I returned to the motel. The moment I stepped back into that damp room, I taped the pages to the wall beside my grandmother's letter. One column at a time, my designs, my lessons, her signature quote, and Madeline's email calling me unstable. Truth lined up in plain sight. I stepped back and looked at the wall. This was my proof, my map, my history, framed not in bitterness, but in ink. And for the first time since walking out of that house, I wasn't just surviving, I was preparing. It was just past 8 p.m. when the knock came. 3 short raps. Not loud, but deliberate. I froze. Nobody knew where I was, at least not officially. I hadn't shared the motel address, hadn't tagged locations. My tutoring clients used a platform. My family only had my phone number, and I wasn't answering. For a second, I considered pretending I wasn't here. But then I heard her voice through the thin motel door. "Eleanor, it's Cassidy. Can I come in?" I blinked. Cassidy Harper. My old friend. My once best friend, really. We'd lost touch after college, after she moved to Seattle, and I stopped returning calls during one of those long silent spells I was too embarrassed to explain. I opened the door slowly, heart thumping. Cassidy looked different. Thinner, sharper, tired in a way that didn't come from sleep deprivation, but something heavier. She wore an oversized sweater and clutched a canvas tote like it held something fragile. She didn't step in right away. Her eyes scanned the room, then landed on the wall. The taped-up documents, the printouts, my grandmother's letter. "So it's true," she said softly. "Come in," I said, stepping back. She crossed the threshold like she was walking into a memory she hadn't been ready to revisit. The door clicked shut behind her, sealing us into the tiny space that now felt suddenly full. "I saw it," she said, voice low. "The site, Madeline's new platform. She's everywhere right now. Ads, podcasts, press releases. And I swear to God, Elena, the moment I opened it, I recognized it. Your language, your design, even your damn sidebars. I knew." I sat down on the edge of the bed, legs suddenly weak. "How?" I asked. "How did she get it?" Cassidy shook her head and dropped her tote on the small table. From it, she pulled out a printed packet, pages dog-eared and highlighted. "This is her promo kit. A contact of mine sent it to me. I used to help you design this stuff, remember? I know your structure." She didn't even bother to change the layout, just slapped her name on it and filtered it through a pastel template. I flipped through the pages. It was worse seeing it through Cassidy's eyes. Someone who knew. Someone who had no reason to lie. Each line screamed familiarity. The flow of the assessment rubric, the 3-tiered lesson plan, the quote at the top of page 3, "Confidence is a consequence of clarity." That was my grandmother's line. "She's saying you gave it to her," Cassidy added, almost gently. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't, I might scream. "Of course she is." Cassidy sat across from me, quiet. Her presence felt like something I didn't realize I'd needed. A witness. A reminder that I wasn't delusional. "She's going to monetize the hell out of this," Cassidy said after a moment. "And worse, she's erasing you in the process. Intentionally. Systematically." I nodded. "It's not the first time." "I know," she looked down. "I should have stayed in touch. I didn't know things had gotten this bad. It's okay, I said, though part of me still ached from all the quiet losses over the years. We both disappeared for a while. She nodded, then reached into her tote again. This time she pulled out something smaller, a worn, cream-colored envelope. I wasn't going to bring this, she said, but I need you to see it. She handed it to me. My name was written on the front, in my handwriting. I found it in your mum's kitchen drawer, she said, under a stack of expired coupons. I was dropping something off for Madeline and, look, I wasn't snooping, but it was just sitting there like trash. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was the birthday card I had mailed to my mother the year before, the one I'd saved up for, the one with the gift card and the handwritten letter asking, begging, for a second chance. It had never been opened. I unfolded the note slowly. The ink hadn't faded. It still said, "If there's still space in your heart for me, I'd like to sit there again. Not asking for everything, just a call back. I miss our Tuesday talks. I miss you." I closed my eyes, let the words settle like dust in my chest. "They never opened it," I whispered. "Not even enough to throw it away." Cassidy said nothing, just sat there, with me. When she finally left an hour later, we didn't hug. We didn't promise to call. We just looked at each other like people who understood too much to say anything more. Once the door clicked shut, I turned back to the wall. I looked at my grandmother's letter, then at Madeline's curriculum, then at the unopened envelope now taped beside the rest. This was more than betrayal. This was theft, not just of work, but of identity, voice, intention. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something shift. Not bitterness, not rage, just clarity. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was provable, and that made me dangerous. I didn't sleep that night. I laid on the bed with my arms crossed over my chest like I was bracing for impact. The room buzzed, fluorescent light leaking in from the parking lot, pipes creaking like someone whispering behind the walls, my brain stuck in a loop of every word Madeline had ever twisted. By sunrise, I felt hollowed out and wired at the same time. I made a cup of motel room coffee, which tasted like burnt plastic and regret, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the wall. Everything was still taped up. The stolen curriculum, the unopened letter, my grandmother's note. And for the first time, I saw it not as a graveyard, but as evidence. A living record of everything they'd tried to bury. Around 9 a.m., I powered on the Chromebook from the library and opened my cloud drive. Not the folder I used for tutoring, but the old archive I hadn't touched in years, the one labeled Legacy. It was mostly drafts and scanned handwritten notes from my grandmother, lesson templates, curriculum flowcharts, voice memos of her explaining how teaching wasn't just instruction, it was translation, emotional translation. She used to say, "People can't learn if they don't feel safe." I almost closed the folder, overwhelmed by her presence in my head and on the screen. But then I saw it, a single PDF file titled willelshipfinal.pdf. I clicked it. My breath caught. It was real. Not just a letter, not just memories, but a legal document. Her will, scanned and notarized. Page 2 included a clause I'd forgotten existed. One she must have added before she passed, but never mentioned out loud. All educational content, preparatory frameworks, written materials, and intellectual property created or co-developed with Elena Shipley shall remain under her sole name and ownership. Any future commercial use must be attributed and approved in writing by Elena Shipley. I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't just sentimental, it was binding. My fingers started moving before I even finished the coffee. I searched local law firms in Eugene. I didn't want a big flashy firm with an ad on the side of a bus. I needed someone quiet, methodical, sharp, someone who believed in documentation the way I believed in backup drives. I found a name, Margot Wynne, intellectual property and estate law. Her website was clean and simple, no fluff, just results. I called and left a message. 30 minutes later, her assistant called back. "Ms. Wynne has an opening at 2:30 today. Can you make it?" I told her I'd be early. I printed the will at the library, slid it into a folder along with copies of the curriculum and the timeline I'd sketched out on the back of a takeout menu the night before. I included screenshots, email headers, old draft files with timestamps. When I arrived at her office, Margot Wynne greeted me herself. She was in her 50s, wore a charcoal blazer and sensible shoes, and had the calm energy of someone who'd seen too many messes to ever be rattled by a new one. "You came prepared," she said, flipping through the folder. "That's good. You'll need it." I sat quietly while she read the will, then skimmed the curriculum, then paused on the stolen branding. Her eyebrows lifted just slightly. "Let me guess," she said. "She has a bigger audience, louder platform, and thinks that means ownership." I nodded. She set the papers down and folded her hands. "You don't need a lawsuit, not yet. What you need is clear, documented ownership and a public record of it. That makes anything she does moving forward a liability." Her voice was even, almost bored. "What she did is theft, plain and simple. But before you shout it from the rooftops, you file the claim. You verify the will. You create a timestamp trail no PR team can spin." I swallowed the knot in my throat. "So I do this quietly?" She nodded. "You don't scream. You document." She handed me a checklist. Notarize the will. Register the curriculum under my name. Submit a formal notice of rights to the tutoring platform I use. And back up everything to 2 offline storage systems. "She wants you to disappear again," Margot said. "You don't let her. You don't react emotionally. You move strategically." I left her office carrying a plastic folder and something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. Not safety, not revenge. Just control. Like someone had handed me a compass and I finally had true north again. That evening, I updated my tutoring bio one more time. This time I added, "Creator of Clarity Curriculum. Protected under IP registration." It felt small, but it was mine. I looked around the motel room with its peeling curtains and yellowed walls. It wasn't pretty, but it was temporary. And now it wasn't just where I slept. It was where I'd reclaimed the first piece of myself. That night, as I climbed into bed with a cup of peppermint tea and my folder of documents beside me, I finally let the weight settle into something solid. I wasn't fighting to be heard anymore. I was building proof that I had been there all along. And when they tried to say I was unstable, bitter, jealous, I'd have the truth taped to the wall and filed in triplicate. Let them talk. Let them brand. Let them edit and spin and smile for curated cameras. I wasn't hiding. I was archiving. The knock came just after dark. Not a soft tap. Not a hesitant pause. 3 sharp thuds, like they already owned the space they were demanding to enter. I froze where I stood, halfway through reorganizing my files. My tea sat untouched on the nightstand, still steeping. The folder Margot gave me was open on the bed. I hadn't expected this. Not today, not this soon. But something deep in my chest told me exactly who it was before I even looked through the peephole. I peeked through the scratched glass and felt my stomach twist. Mom, Dad, and Madeline. All 3 of them. I didn't open the door right away. I took a breath, walked calmly across the room, and slid the folder under the pillow. Not because I was hiding it, but because I didn't want to give them a single inch of control. Then I opened the door. They looked smaller than I remembered. Mum's lipstick was faded. Dad's shoulders slumped forward, like the years had finally caught up. Madeline. Her eyeliner was smudged. The curated glow was gone. "Eleanor," Mum said first. Her voice was softer than usual, like she was trying not to spook a stray animal. I stepped aside but didn't invite them in. We stood in the narrow hallway. The air was sharp, thick with everything unsaid. "We came to talk," Mom continued. "Things got out of hand." "No," I said calmly. "Things got revealed." Madeline flinched. She was holding a phone in one hand, clutching it like it was armor. "She's getting attacked," Mom blurted. "Online. There's a blog post. Accusations of plagiarism. People are reposting screenshots, saying she stole curriculum. Your name is coming up in comments." I didn't say a word. I watched as they twisted, trying to spin a narrative that didn't belong to them anymore. Dad finally spoke. "We didn't realize it had gone that far." I looked him in the eye. "You never realize, until you need me." He said nothing after that, just looked away. Madeline stepped forward, voice trembling. You don't understand what this is doing to me. I'm losing brand deals. I have people calling me a thief. I wonder why, I said. My tone wasn't cruel, just done. You're bitter, she snapped. You've always been bitter. There it was, the truth, her version of it. I nodded slowly. I used to be. Now I'm just prepared. Mom reached for my arm. I stepped back. Not harsh, just enough. Eleanor, we're family, she said. We can fix this. No, I said quietly. You mean I can fix this? For you? That's what you've always meant. I paused. Let the silence sit heavy in the hallway. Then I said what I'd been holding in for years. Family meant not burning my letters. It meant opening the envelope I sent for your birthday. It meant not replacing me in the photo wall like I never existed. Mom's mouth opened, but no sound came. Madeline whispered, This wasn't supposed to happen. I raised an eyebrow. You mean getting caught? She looked like a child then. Not the influencer. Not the face of a polished brand. Just a girl who never learned the difference between being followed and being respected. I'm not going to save you, I said, voice low and steady. I'm not going to disappear again just so your story looks cleaner. They didn't argue. Not really. What could they say? When I stepped back into the room, I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply closed it, with a click, and turned the lock. Later that night, I sat on the bed and opened my laptop. The tea had gone cold, but I drank it anyway. My phone lit up with missed calls and texts. One from my dad, one from Madeline, a few from an unknown number I already guessed was someone from her PR team. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened the folder again, reviewed the checklist Margot gave me. Then I clicked Upload on my ownership filing. My name, my curriculum, my time-stamped proof. It was done. Outside, the motel neon buzzed faintly. Inside, the walls were quiet. And for the first time in years, so was I. Not because I was silenced, but because I no longer needed to explain myself to people who'd already decided not to hear me. The email came in at 6:17 a.m., right as the sun was starting to bleed pale light through the blinds of my motel room. My eyes were barely open when I reached for my phone and saw the red flag banner glowing on the screen. Urgent, copyright violation, site suspended, pending review. I sat up instantly. No coffee, no stretch, no breath, just ice in my veins and a fist in my throat. I clicked into the email. My tutoring site, my one source of income, my rebuilt identity, had been flagged for unauthorized use of proprietary content. The source of the complaint? An anonymized IP address, but the language was unmistakable. Legal boilerplate from a PR firm trying to sound objective while aiming straight at the softest part of me. I didn't panic. My hands trembled, but I didn't spiral. I remembered what Margot said. You don't scream, you document. I opened the folder we prepared together. Everything was there. Timestamps, drafts, scanned pages of the curriculum, the clause from my grandmother's will, circled in red ink. My own digital footprints dated years before Madeline even hinted at an educational brand. I copied it all into a new folder labeled Counterclaim. I opened a blank document and started typing, To whom it may concern, I am the sole creator and legal owner of the Clarity curriculum. I didn't stop to cry, didn't pause for rage. Every paragraph I wrote felt like a reclamation. When I attached the will and comparison sheets, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. I hit send. Then I logged into every tutoring platform I had access to and updated my bio. Original creator of Clarity curriculum. Full rights protected. It felt like a warning, like armor. By noon, I'd heard back from the site admin. They were reviewing both claims. I'd provided strong counter-evidence, they said. Next step, legal validation. I forwarded everything to Margot, who responded 15 minutes later with a message that read simply, I'm on it. Good work. It wasn't over, but it wasn't helpless either. I poured myself a cup of lukewarm tea and sat by the window, watching cars roll by the highway just beyond the parking lot. The air smelled like gasoline and damp pavement. My phone buzzed again, this time with texts from my clients. One parent asked if our session was still on. Another said, Hey, just saw something about you online. Hope you're okay. And then came the one that undid me, quietly. From a mom in Houston whose son I had helped last fall. Your course saved my daughter's future. Don't let them take this from you. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I printed it out and pinned it to the wall next to my grandmother's letter and the legal documents. That wall, once filled with loss, now looked like a war map. Only this time I wasn't the casualty. I was the strategist. By early evening, I logged onto Instagram and saw Madeline's newest post. A soft-filtered video of her typing at her desk, music swelling beneath her caption. People love to take credit once the hard work's done. Funny how that works. It was classic misdirection. But something was different now. The comments weren't as curated. A few asked, "Didn't this belong to someone else?" One said, "I thought her sister created this?" The internet was catching up. Truth, when armed with proof, tends to move faster than a hashtag. And then, hours later, a crack appeared in the wall she'd built. A former intern of hers posted screenshots, timestamps, emails, even Canva templates, with my name embedded in the metadata. It spread like wildfire, not because I shouted, but because the receipts always speak. I didn't respond publicly, not yet. Instead, I made dinner, instant noodles and a hard-boiled egg. Then I sat on my bed and opened my laptop again. I had another email from the platform. Site temporarily restored during review. Please continue operating as normal. That was all I needed. The smallest green light. A flicker of control. I wasn't out of the woods, but I wasn't cornered anymore. As I turned off the lamp and crawled into bed, I whispered out loud, to no one but the room, "Let them come. I've got the truth printed, filed, and notarized." Then I slept, not heavily, not fearlessly, but for the first time in weeks, with my back to the door and my face toward the future. I didn't plan to record anything. I wasn't trying to go viral or clear my name in front of strangers. I didn't care about trending hashtags or fighting back in the comments. I just couldn't sleep. It was 2:13 a.m., and my motel room buzzed with silence so loud it felt like pressure in my ears. My laptop screen cast a soft glow on the peeling wallpaper. I sat at the edge of the bed, knees pulled to my chest, cursor blinking in an empty search bar. Then I opened the webcam. Not because I was ready, but because I was done hiding. I didn't check my hair, didn't change my shirt. I was wearing the same old hoodie I'd had since college, sleeves stretched out and comfort worn. No ring light, no filter, just me, my breath tight in my chest, and a desk lamp that flickered every few minutes. I clicked record. At first I didn't speak, just held up the first sheet of paper, the notarized page from my grandmother's will. Her signature circled, my name, bold in black ink. Then I spoke. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. This is mine, the curriculum, the framework, the design. I wrote it. I built it. My grandmother co-developed it with me. And when she passed, she left it to me. I held up the second paper. The side-by-side comparison. Madeline's branding on one side. My original drafts on the other. Dates, details, identical structure. I didn't name her directly. I didn't accuse or insult. I just said, there's a difference between a family disagreement and theft. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was intentional. And it's been happening in small ways for years. I was erased to make someone else's version of the truth look better. Then I pulled out the unopened envelope. The birthday letter I had mailed to my mother last year. I held it close to the camera. They never even opened this. I wrote asking for peace, for reconnection, for a phone call, and it stayed under expired coupons in a kitchen drawer. I let the silence hang. I'm not bitter. I'm not jealous. I'm not unstable. I'm tired. And I'm done being quiet to protect the people who only remember I exist when they need something fixed. I looked straight into the lens, eyes heavy but clear. They say silence is strength. Sometimes that's true, but sometimes silence is how they bury you. I ended the video there. No music, no outro, no call to action, just the truth. I uploaded it to a private link first, sat there staring at the publish button for nearly 10 minutes. Then I clicked it, shared it on my professional page. No caption, no drama, just the link, and waited. I fell asleep with the laptop still open on my lap. When I woke up 3 hours later, it had over 3,000 views. By noon, 12,000, then 25,000. I didn't refresh obsessively. I didn't track every comment, but the messages came in like quiet knocks at a locked door I'd finally decided to open. A former tutoring client shared the video with the caption, "She helped my son graduate when no one else could. This woman built something real." A teacher I'd collaborated with reposted it, saying, "I used her framework for 2 years and didn't even know. She deserves credit and protection." A blogger wrote a thread titled, "Not all influencers are innovators," a breakdown of the Clarity curriculum theft. Even Reddit picked it up. A thread that once dragged my name now bore a new title. "The receipts are in. The moderators locked the old narrative and pinned the new one." Madeline stayed silent for 24 hours. Then she posted a vague Instagram story. A black background with white text. "Some people will do anything for attention." It backfired. Comments flooded in. Not trolls, truth seekers. Screenshots from my video. Quotes from the will. Timestamps. Her intern even confirmed in a now-deleted tweet that everything Elena said checks out. "We saw the drafts. She wrote them." By evening, I was receiving messages from legal professionals offering pro bono representation. A podcast wanted to feature my story. A parent asked if I'd consider building a full online course. I ignored most of it for now. Not because I wasn't grateful, but because I was tired. This wasn't a victory lap. It was a release. I walked to the coffee shop before it closed, ordered a refill I could barely afford, and sat by the window with my back to the room. I opened a clean document and typed the words I hadn't been able to write until now. I am the original creator. My name belongs in the credits. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was proving anything. I was simply taking back what had always been mine. The envelope arrived on a Thursday, certified mail. A man in a delivery uniform knocked on my door just after noon, clipboard in hand. "Signature required," he said. I scribbled my name, closed the door behind me, and sat at my tiny desk staring at the cream-colored paper like it might bite. Inside, a formal letter from a high-rise law firm in Los Angeles, representing Madeline, titled Proposed Settlement Agreement. The offer, full acknowledgement that the Clarity curriculum was based on my original material, my name reinstated, rights returned, and a 6-figure check. But only if I signed the attached NDA, only if I agreed to never speak publicly again. No interviews, no posts, no lawsuits, just silence. The kind of silence that comes with a dollar amount. I read it 3 times, once with disbelief, once with anger, and once calmly. And by the end of that 3rd read, I knew exactly what I would do. I didn't call Margot. I didn't run a poll online. I didn't text Cassidy to ask for advice. I stood, walked to the corner of the room, and turned on the small paper shredder I'd bought last week for documents like this. Slowly, 1 sheet at a time, I fed the settlement into the machine. The letter, the NDA, the check. It hissed, hummed, and shredded everything into thin ribbons. No drama, no hesitation, just clarity. Then I opened my laptop. I typed out one final post, just an image, a plain background with bold letters. You don't owe anyone your silence just because they share your blood. I included a caption, "I won't take hush money for pain I didn't cause." Then I closed the laptop and walked away from the screen. By nightfall, it was everywhere. Shared by women in academia, retweeted by educators, posted by daughters, sisters, people who had lived inside that same invisible erasure and never had the words for it until now. One message stopped me cold. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. That weekend, I packed my things and moved into a shared apartment just outside of Eugene. Nothing fancy, 2 bedrooms, faded carpet, a window that faced a grocery store parking lot, but it had a desk and a door that locked, and a light that I chose to turn on or off. I hung a small frame above the desk, the wrinkled paper I'd carried since the motel, my grandmother's handwriting, still clear. "You will build what no one sees today." Next to it, I pinned the final legal registration for the Clarity curriculum, now under my name, with the seal of the state of Oregon. Underneath, A thank you note from Riley, handwritten in purple pen. You're the only one who believed I could pass. You made me believe it too. I hadn't heard from my family since the post went live. Not on my birthday. Not when Madeline's site was taken down for IP conflict. Not when quiet whispers started saying Mom sold the house. Some said to pay legal costs. Some said she just couldn't stand the photos anymore. But I didn't follow the rumors. I didn't wait for an apology delivered through silence. They weren't villains, just people who found it easier to write me out than face what they didn't want to see. And I wasn't bitter anymore. I wasn't chasing their voices. I was too busy using my own. Last month, I launched a small scholarship fund in my grandmother's name. Nothing huge, just enough to help one student a year afford tutoring or study materials. I named it the Quiet Builders Grant because some of us don't shout. We write, we teach, we stay. And when we're erased, we build our way back in. One of the first notes I received from the scholarship form read, "No one in my family believes I'll get into college, but maybe I don't need them to." I printed it, folded it carefully, put it in an envelope, no return address, no message, just the same words my grandmother once gave me. You will build what no one sees today. And maybe someday, that envelope will reach another girl sitting alone in a room she doesn't feel at home in. Maybe it'll reach her before the silence does. And maybe she'll know. This is not the end. This is the part where you choose the ending yourself. I hope you enjoyed this story. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss touching stories. Leave a like, and then comment below what you thought of the emotional stories. See you in the next video.